All right, this is LA Not So Confidential. Welcome back, everyone. So I'm Dr. Shiloh, if you haven't been with us before, and I'm here with...
Dr. Scott. Welcome back to Season 2, Episode 1, and a huge Okay, we're not going to apologize.
We keep apologizing.
No, hold on, but it's different this time. We're not apologizing for the length between the episodes. We're apologizing for not letting people know that it was the end of Season 1.
Okay, I'll take it.
All right.
But I really want that to be the last apology.
Yeah, we do
Can
too.
We do that?
I wish most of you could see us right now because we are in the most awkward position in my luxurious Hollywood bedroom.
Almost sitting on each other's laps.
Almost. It's because we're trying to figure out this GarageBand thing with wonderful microphones from Blue Yeti. But hey, guys at Blue Yeti, can you just freaking come down and tell me how to do this? Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But anyway, here's what we got to work with. Welcome back.
Yeah. So I feel like we have to play catch up a little bit.
Oh, yeah. We got a lot of catching up.
God, I've been...
Tell me about your summer.
I know. Did you have a bitchin' summer? Just watching a lot of stuff, reading a lot of stuff, listening to a lot of stuff, which is nice to like catch up on all of that. I've had to break up some of the true crime stuff. Like I've been going back and watching like episodes of Glee, Love, and some other stuff. It starts
to weigh down on you, especially when we also work that stuff 40 hours a week. So
yeah, but I went back and I read The Voyeur's Motel.
Oh, you read the whole book?
Yes.
Okay.
So it was basically like publishing the guy's diary.
Wow.
So I feel like the book and the documentary go very well together. I would suggest reading it.
Okay, so there's more information?
More information, but I think the documentary, you also get more information about the subject, about the voyeur.
Well, you also get to see him, visually. And he is such a character.
Yes.
I mean, we talked about that in the episode last season, that he is... It's almost unbelievable. I mean, it's almost, with no disrespect, but he's such a caricature. It's almost like Saturday Night Live.
Yeah, yeah.
He's really a broad type that you're like, wow, that's a real person.
Right. And I think you pick up on things in the documentary, like about his wife that isn't necessarily portrayed very well in the book, and just kind of back and forth. I think they go together pretty well. Let's see, what else? I'm currently reading No Stone Unturned, which is all about forensic sciences. Mm. So, it's nice to kind of get away from some of the more psychological things and just crime scene investigation. And then as far as stuff that I've been listening to, podcasts, of course, are my best friend on the way to work. Nordic True Crime is one that I love everything Scandinavian.
Yeah.
It's kind of like I've been there a couple times, and I just love everything about it. And I feel like true crime or crime dramas from that region are really good.
Well, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo is riveting, and
the version of The Bridge came originally from there.
Oh, right.
So yeah, there's just so much good storytelling, but this is all true crime from the Scandinavian regions. Just it's great. It's really dark. It kind of reminds me of like that Pacific Northwest feel here in the States.
What was the one with Al Pacino? Insomnia.
Oh,
Insomnia,
yes.
which I know is actually more. That's Alaska. That's northern Alaska, because remember it's 24-hour day when he's.
But yes, you're right. But like if those being in like Finland or Iceland or something high up,
same latitude.
Yeah. And of course, I want to mention our new BFFs from Hollyweird Paranormal. So they had actually cited some of our research in an episode they did on cults. And so, of course, I've listened to all of their stuff and just can't wait for new stuff to come out.
And we also just came from Dupar's at the farmer's market having breakfast with them, which was an absolute delight. And I never used that word, but like I was commenting as we were walking away, like, wow, like the energy and humor and intelligence that both of them have is going to be so much fun to work with. Yeah.
So we have some things in the mix that we're trying to plan and hopefully have some good stuff for you guys. But if you guys aren't listening to them, please do. Their podcast is great. They follow true crime here in the Hollywood area and any sort of aftermath that has a paranormal feel to it, that's a follow-up on the story. They kind of marry those two things together, and it's really neat.
Do some pretty great research, too. Yeah. I mean, I'm really impressed by the depth that they go into, which is pretty amazing. And that was me hitting a spring. I'm not going to edit. I'm not going to laugh. I know. I'm sorry. I'm not going to.
It's very uncomfortable.
I'm not going to edit that out. So there you go.
So yeah, just been diving into a lot of stuff. What about you?
Nothing. No.
Wait,
I traveled a little bit this summer. I did I traveled and saw family. I have been doing I hibernate during the summer. In Southern California, one thing we should be talking about, folks, which is directly related to this week's episode, is the seasons here are so strange in Southern California. Like, we have May gray.
Okay, yeah.
We have May gray, then we have June gloom, and then we go into July, and it's like pleasant sometimes, it's not so pleasant, then it gets hot, and then by the time August gets around, I don't have the energy to do anything. So so you ask what I've been doing.
Right.
I have been marathoning the entire series of The Strain, which was and it's not really our thing, because it's a science fiction horror fantasy thing, but what I find fascinating, in the same way that I find The Walking Dead fascinating, is it's about what people do under duress. And that, from a psych perspective, is fascinating to me. It's like, okay, so here's another sort of apocalyptic vision of what could happen. And, if you take out all the vampire stuff and the sort of horror fantasy stuff, there are elements of this, like watching, oh, well, yeah, that's how you could take down the grid. That's how you could take down communication. That completely makes sense. And then all the chaos afterwards. So
maybe it'll be a good time for you to jump back into The Walking Dead, because supposedly this coming season that's going to start in October, I think it always starts around Halloween. But there's not really conflict. It's more of this rebuilding.
Oh, okay.
It's supposed to be a year and a half after the whole Negan thing.
Perfect.
So it might be, psychologically, I like that stuff too. Like, how are people really, either connecting with humanity again, or rebuilding these communities?
Because I gave up. I don't even remember which season it was. Might have been season 6. I gave up after sort of the fall of Alexandria, when Negan came into the picture.
Yeah.
Because that, just from my perspective, I think his name is Jeffrey Dean Morgan. He's a great actor, but the scene chewing, I was just tired of it.
Yeah.
Like, tell me a story. I don't want to see this particular storyline. So I'll make a deal with you. I don't want to watch those episodes. So over our next meal, we'll get the Wikipedia episode list. You can tell it to me in a story, so I don't have to see him chewing scenery.
Sounds good. I'll
pick up. Okay.
Good.
But yeah, so I know what I was going to lead into is that pertinent to today's episode is this is also a really dangerous time of year for Southern California. And unfortunately, it's not only in Southern California. The fires are everywhere in our country right now because of climate conditions and overgrowth and water. There's tons of factors that overlap, but, undeniably, the climate change plays a big part of it. Right.
Yeah. Fire season is one of our seasons, and this one has been really bad.
Yeah.
We have the one of the fires up north is now the worst in state history, and as you guys can probably hear that I'm like sniffling a lot. My allergies are going crazy because I live close enough to where I wake up every morning and there's ash on my car, and so there's down in Riverside and San Bernardino counties, we have the Holy Fire going right now. So there's a lot, and there's not jumping too quickly into our topic, but a lot of these really big fires have been linked back to arson. And so, that puts a whole nother spin and element on it that we're definitely going to touch on today.
Yeah. So building on that, this week's episode is on arson, which is, when I was telling you this as we were prepping for the episode, I actually sent you a really nasty text because because I'm so overwhelmed with things that I am passionately interested in. I actually never had any interest in this at all because it's so destructive.
I thought the same thing.
I just really had no interest. And we know, even though, I mean, just for those of you who listened to us before, you know a little bit of our backgrounds. But there's a handful of diagnoses in the DSM that are pretty much like, that's black and white.
Yeah.
There's not really a lot of treatment for that.
Right.
And so when we talk about hardcore, hardwired pedophilia, it's like there's only a very slender, narrow window of treatment options available. And arson falls into that too.
Right.
And we're going to talk about why it is that way.
Yeah, if you guys are familiar with, obviously that there's a sex offender registry. There's really, in California, there's only 3 registries. There's a sex offender registry, there's a registry for repeat drug offenders, and there's an arson registry. So I think, when I was kind of reflecting back on this too, that arson has never been one of those crimes or compulsive behaviors that I've dove into at an interest level so much. But to sit back and go, oh, there's a registry for that kind of gives you some context of, so these people are dangerous for their life, and that's why we need to keep track of where they're at.
Right.
So that's essentially what a registry tells you.
And yet, even so, as I started diving further, you gave me like, hey, look this up and let's build on that. It goes into, it's Alice down the rabbit hole because while we're talking about that it's a specific diagnosis with a very narrow window of treatment, we're going to be talking about one of the perpetrators in the most recent, in the Holy Fires, that meets some of the criteria and yet doesn't meet some of the other ones. And we'll get to that eventually.
Yeah.
But to start off with, so that's our catch up. We wanted to start off with a little bit of talking about the underpinnings of pyromania, which is not necessarily. Let's see if I can do a syllogism. I'm not sure that every arsonist is a pyromaniac,
right?
But every pyromaniac has the potential to become an arsonist.
Sure.
That's not in the DSM. That's no. Research base. That's just me putting that together. But, as we've watched and delved into all this material, that's one of the things that I've come to notice. But I want to, because I was an English major in my undergrad, and because instead of Grimm's fairy tales, I was raised by my 2 lovely sisters read Edith Hamilton's mythology to me growing up. As I was going to bed, I was always fascinated with the myth of Prometheus. Mm-hmm. And so coming from Greek mythology, prior to the gods, there was the race of the elder gods called the Titans. Prometheus was sort of seen as, he had a multi-dimensional character, and in a way was known to be a trickster in the way that Loki in Norse mythology is seen. And a trickster plays an important role in sort of, if we're going to approach this from Jungian or narrative psychology, is about the role that people play, the role that these drives in us play. So this Prometheus was seen as a trickster. And, prior to man's creation, Earth was a paradise. The gods, the mythological creatures kind of pranced around and had this sort of Eden-like experience. And then Prometheus felt like, and Prometheus also means forethinking. It's thinking forward. He had a brother named Epimetheus who only thought backwards. So if you only think forward, there's the good things and bad things. If you only think backward, there's bad things and good things. But Prometheus decides that he's going to create man out of clay. He creates man. Man is very primitive and not able to move forward. So he decides, the thing that's really going to make this work is giving them fire. Okay. Because fire is power.
Right.
So he takes a reed from the river, and as Apollo flies across the sky in his chariot with his wheel being the sun, he reaches up and he lights a spark from Apollo's wheel.
Oh, okay.
the chariot wheel, and he brings it down and he gives it to man. And the gods, I mean, they were pissed off. It's like, fire is holy, fire is power, it is ours, it is secret, it is mystery. You did not have the right to do this. And he's like, hey, it was just time. It's time for them to progress.
Just stirring things up.
Right. And of course, the punishment, unfortunately, was that Zeus took Prometheus, chained him to a rock, and then sent an immortal eagle to every morning come and devour his liver. So the eagle would rip into him, eat his liver, and then fly away. And of course, being a Titan and immortal, it's going to grow back and he will heal. And so he has to be tortured again the next day.
It's like Groundhog Day.
Groundhog Day.
Torture.
And interestingly enough, how this ties in, I think, in a fascinating manner, is that the liver has been seen traditionally for thousands of years, and by the Greeks and the Romans and the Egyptians. The liver was the seat of emotions.
Wow, interesting.
Which, interestingly enough, today is it's seen that way because there's a lot of chemical reactions that change the composition of the liver metabolism, depending on our emotional state. Right. So there's where fire came from. There's also, I hooked into this really incisive posting by Natalie Wolchover about sort of the psychological motivation of our draw to fire. And she interviewed Daniel Fessler, who's an evolutionary anthropologist at University of California, LA. And he has conducted research on adults' fascination with fire. I love that there are researchers out there doing this, because I would have never thought to research that particular thing.
But think of like how just intoxicating it is to sit down and watch a fire.
And there's a reason why.
Tell me all about it.
So there's a reason. The reason why is because it depends on whether or not you needed to use fire for survival as a child. So if you grew up in a rural area and you were used to setting a fire in the hearth at home for winter, or you went out camping and you set a fire, or fire had something to do with your day-to-day life, which is not so common anymore in modern life.
But like cooking and warmth and basic needs.
So that's where we see the real difference, is that people who have never seen fire as necessity for survival have more curiosity, more fascination, and more draw to fire. So I think we need to separate that from the relaxation that comes from people sitting in front of a fire, like, oh, it's a chilly night, let's put a fire in the fireplace. But this seems to be the kernel of how people get fascinated, curious, which you and I know can move into over fascinations, to a paraphilia.
With these fires going on, and we have like, whenever there's a natural disaster in California, or not even natural disaster, when it rains, our wall-to-wall news coverage of weather is like so intense because any change is news. But my husband and I were watching the news coverage of the Holy Fire, and he's like, why do I like just sitting here and watching even through the television? And we can just watch news footage of it, and it's so interesting, and it's so destructive, and people's lives are being ruined. But, you see one of those little, like, fire tornadoes, and you're like, oh, my God,
that looks like a special effect from a movie.
It's so crazy.
Yeah. Oh. So, Fessler goes on to say that, that he believes that humans have evolved special mechanisms that they're dedicated to controlling sort of the understanding that fire is crucial to survival. So, he's got some stats to back it up. I think it's interesting. But because most Westerners no longer learn how to start, maintain, or use fire during childhood, we instead wind up with this fascination, this curious attraction to it. So his preliminary findings found out that humans are not universally fascinated by fire. Instead, that the fascination is a consequence of inadequate experience with fire during developmental periods. So that, to me, is really interesting. And one of the sort of the control group, or the base, contrast for his research, was looking at indigenous societies where, they're not fascinated. There's no arsonists in indigenous communities because they're using it every day.
Right.
To survive.
It's a tool.
So children are universally fascinated by predatory animals in a similar manner, in the same way that they're fascinated by fire. So he's saying that there may be a biological imperative. There's an evolutionary, pathway that's been developed in us so that we understand that both of these things that we are fascinated by can be very dangerous. So kids are naturally curious about animals are dangerous and which ones aren't. So they're also, every little kid is a budding pyromaniac. I mean, I say that jokingly, but it is fascinating because it's power, right? Like, let's take that little match and strike it. Or
it's taboo because your parents warn you against, stay away from the stove or
exactly.
matches
And parents lose their shit. Like, get away from that, away from that. So, in societies where fire is used daily, it is a tool, it is a means to an every day, to work every day. The kids learn these answers. They learn that they learn to have a relationship with fire by the age of around 7.
Okay.
And it usually starts at around 3, where they can, they're starting to explore their environment. Mm-hmm. They have a different relationship, whereas here in the West, we don't have that.
It's just taboo instead of having this respect and needing to know how to work with it.
Right. He has this really great quote. He says, "The motives that drive fire learning are only incompletely satisfied with the result that throughout life, fire retains greater allure or fascination that would normally be the cause, I totally was not expecting that as we were doing the research. I was not expecting that there would be, there may be some kind of biological drive going on here for survival. Right. So from there, we talk about, now, let's switch all the way back to just like pure concrete DSM, Diagnostic and Statistical Manual. Pyromania is an impulse control disorder. It's in a class of disorders that we characterize by a word called impulsivity. And impulsivity is a failure or inability to resist a temptation it's the inability not to speak on a thought. And as I say that, I realize how much that applies to me. I have an impulse control disorder. A lot of disorders will have features of impulsivity. Some substance-related disorders, which may move into or out of addiction, could be classified as impulsivity or impulse control disorders. We've got behavioral addictions. We've got some forms of ADHD. Some of the hallmarks of antisocial personality disorder certainly will fit into that impulsivity category, when that certainly relates to the idea of pyromania and arson. So in the DSM, impulsivity would be characterized by emotional and behavioral self-control challenges. So if we look at, how do I want to describe this? If we look at the cycle, and a lot of things in understanding disorders, or a lot of understanding of disorders, is looking at certain cycles. So if we're going to talk about a cycle in an impulse control disorder, we're going to talk about 5 behavioral stages that go generally in this order. There's an impulse, there's a growing tension, there is a pleasure on acting, and then there's a relief from the urge. So there's basically we're building up to climax, right? So there's a relief from the urge, and finally guilt. Maybe that's the one where guilt, let's just say there's a real spectrum of guilt, and it may be,
but a certain percentage will fill that.
Yes. Yeah, but
afterwards.
Certainly not everyone. But pyromania itself is going to be characterized by impulsive and repetitive urges to deliberately start those fires. And there's a bunch of studies that show, we've got more data now that we know what to look for, but historically there hasn't been a lot of data. In fact, we're going to talk today about a movie that was made, regarding things that happened in the 70s and 80s. But other than that, there's not a lot of fire movies.
Right. And so when you talk about this cycle, or kind of the buildup of tension and sort of this anxiety, and that the behavior, the fire setting, is the relief of that tension or anxiety.
Right.
it is similar to things we see like other impulse control disorders. Exhibitionism,
right,
very much so follows that pattern of anxiety, and they need to do it. And then once it's done, that anxiousness goes away. What other...
Well,
with gambling a little bit, I don't have a ton of experience working with compulsive gamblers, but there's sort of that same buildup.
Kleptomania, that's a big one. Kleptomania is a big one. Even using a completely different example would be going to that Lenore Walker's cycle of violence, when there's basically it's the same thing, a buildup of tension,
right,
and then a release. Only in this, unfortunately, someone's getting really hurt very badly in this particular example of release. But I find that interesting because it's certainly indicative that there's something going on for people that don't have emotional regulation, maybe don't have insight or ability to tolerate difficult emotions, that makes them more susceptible to impulse controlled behaviors. And pyromania, I need to make sure that we state that it's distinct from arson. So the deliberate setting of fires for many different reasons. Arson would be deliberate setting for personal, monetary, or political gain. Pyromaniacs start fires to induce a sense of well-being or almost orgasmic euphoria. I mean, we really do akin it to it's a sexual excitement in a way. And one of the things they'll do is pyromaniacs will also be fascinated by all the agencies that are involved in the fire. The
whole show of it, the whole response.
It's like a circus to them.
Right.
So they're going to be waiting for the fire department to show up.
Right.
They're going to be watching each stage because they're also usually they're so learned about how this goes down. They're going to be watching for each stage. Oh, this is where this channel of air is going to cause an explosion. This is where they're probably going to be able to pull those people out. And then they'll be watching the EMTs do their work.
Right.
And
helicopters and news and
and
the community coming out. Sure.
And interestingly enough, some of the things that we touch on later is the idea that there's a huge association with firefighters, whether or not, and we'll be giving an example today of a firefighter who was an arsonist, but they are fascinated with that job, and usually it's somebody that would never be able to have that job for a number of reasons.
Yes. Thank God they have psych exams for that sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
What about treatment for it?
Well, that's the other thing. I was looking at the data. Most of the cases in pyromania occur in children and teenagers. And one of the things that we understand for how they get there is, and we'll be discussing that because you had that table, but usually, there's some abuse, there's neglect, there's other characterological issues. And although I always hate to default to this, the stats show that it is widely influenced by the lack of a father figure. Yeah. Neglect by a father, absence of a father, and I like to stay away from that because I don't,
Well, I think as long as we stick with that and not the converse of like everyone who doesn't have a father figure in their life is going to be an arsonist.
Which a lot of people jump to. It's everything would be better if you had a dad in your life. Right. I'm like, no, that doesn't exactly work that way. Just a common
thread with arsonists. This is what we're seeing. But I think with the impulse part, I mean, cognitive behavioral therapy is really...
that's the only thing.
Right.
Yeah, that's the only thing is cognitive behavior.
So really learning how to pay attention to the feelings associated with the tension when it comes up, what those triggers might be, and then implementing coping skills and alternative behaviors.
Right. And I might just, so what you just did, very cut and dried, sounds very simple.
Yeah.
And on one hand it is because we know that it works, right? But we also know that it could take months to years just to get to part one of that.
Oh, sure.
Right?
Sure.
Even developing an understanding for what those impulses are. Especially for people that are...
That's half the battle.
Yeah.
getting in there and identifying that with them of what those triggers are and the associated feelings.
So yeah, that's the treatment. There's more information about, gosh, what is it? Oh, most of the adolescents who've committed crimes of arson have committed crimes in the past. 19% of adolescents with pyromania have been charged with vandalism. 18% are nonviolent sex offenders.
Oh, yes, I did see
that. Now,
that
was surprising
really
to me.
Interesting.
Do you remember what you read about it? Because I didn't get much.
No, I think it was just statistical. There was nothing really linking it, but it just, I mean, to me speaks to boundary issues and impulse control issues that are just being manifested in a wide variety of areas. Right. So like with, rapists, sex offenders who offend against adults. So generally like your rapists or, sexual assaulters, they have a wide variety of criminal elements in their background. I think the one study I looked at, there's like 19,000 other types of offenses they've engaged in. They're just kind of that, I will offend against whomever or whatever. Right. It's just kind of part of their background.
I'm a general opportunity offender.
Equal opportunity offender actually is what I call it. So I don't know if this is just, a mini adolescent version of that. But it just speaks to impulse control. So
I was going to say that the one solid research thing that I came up with I'm not going to say really old, but 2001. I'm not particularly comfortable with research right. that's 17 years old. Right. But the researcher was saying that in adults, the recovery rate is generally poor. Mm-hmm. And if an adult does recover, it usually takes a longer period of time than the treatment for an adolescent. So
catch it early.
Yeah, catch it early. It's not good.
I think we do a good job of. I mean, people take it pretty seriously when kids and adolescents are caught doing that. And
right. I mean, I don't
treatment for it.
I hope so, because it seems to me that there's going to be a need for a lot of differentiation as to what's going on. What's going on as a motivational behavior, because another part of the research was talking about that there's a whole subclass that happens to use fire/arson, and it's purely for attention-seeking behaviors. Oh. So that to me seems, that's another branch of treatment and approach. Sure. Or not treatment necessarily, but understanding.
Right.
But it does tie into that, neglect issue. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's what
So I just want to talk about
what did you do?
Just arson, nothing, just hanging out. I want to go over our criminal elements here in California for arson, just so we have those. Interestingly, arson is Penal Code Section 451. What does that make you think of?
Fahrenheit 451.
Fahrenheit 451.
That's the temperature at which paper burns.
Supposedly, yeah. In the book, that was the temperature at which books burned, because the firefighter in that, his job was to burn books. Right. So anyway, in California we have a sense of humor, so we made it Penal Code Section 451.
Oh, it shows that. Okay.
So a person is guilty of arson if they willingly and maliciously set a fire that burns any structure, forest, land, or property. So that basically covers everything, right? They'll go to prison. It's a felony if there's any great bodily injury that results from it. They'll also go to prison if the arson is set to an inhabited structure or property. And they'll also go to prison if it's forest land that they set on fire. So that's a lot of what we see, obviously, with these big, ongoing, weeks-long fires here in California. If the burning is to that person's own property, it's not considered arson. I mean, because basically they've, given consent, if you will. unless there's some sort of intent to defraud, or there's injury to somebody else or someone else's property. So you can set your own stuff on fire. Just make sure it doesn't jump into your neighbor's yard. But I mean, I say that kind of like flippantly, but of course,
when
you can't just start fires, and a lot of cities have codes against that.
And I think, it looks like there's also flexibility in how far, that's a felony. So it's a serious crime. And I remember at the jail, we would get people that were coming, I would be processing inmates through, and I would see what the charge was. And if it was arson, and then you would see that their bail actually was really low. And then I'd look more into the details, or I'd ask them, even when I was doing their eval, I was like, so what happened? And it would be, a homeless person that's in a derelict structure that had started a fire to stay warm.
Right. What's the intent?
What's the intent there? But they'll start with the charge of arson.
Yeah. It just has to be proved in court later.
Exactly. And you can already tell, like, if they give them a low, if it's, $15,000 bail as opposed to $500,000 bail. It's like, oh, okay, well, we see how this is going to go.
Yeah.
And it's also the person was like, hey, I was just trying to stay warm.
Right. Yeah. It's not necessarily anything we as a community need to be concerned about from a repetitive sort of impulsive or compulsive nature.
Hi, I'm Lainey, host of the True Crime Fan Club podcast, and I'm excited to tell you about my brand new podcast called It's Haunted, What Now? It's a podcast that brings you true stories about haunted objects and the owners who unknowingly welcome them into their lives. Join me as I share these creepy, spooky, and downright terrifying stories. You can find It's Haunted, What Now? On your favorite podcatcher or at hauntedpod.com.
So, did you want to talk a little bit about our arsonist here, or alleged arsonist with the holy fire? And then I can kind of dive into...
Well, let's see. I'll give you some background, too. That was ignited on Monday, August 5th. And as of yesterday, over 10,000 acres... It was on fire, destroyed at least 12 structures, and it forced more than 21,000 people to evacuate their homes, and that was by Thursday night.
Right.
And then that also included, the Mendocino Fire Complex, which was earlier this week, and that's the largest wildfire in state history. And the fire had consumed more than 305,000 acres in Northern California. That's about 476 square miles. Or an expanse. It's as big as LA. Yeah. And it went on nonstop for 2 weeks, and it's really only about 50% contained.
Yeah.
And CAL FIRE is already looking at it they're not even estimating it to be contained until next month, which is it's like almost, it's hard to wrap your mind around. Yeah. It's really hard to wrap your mind around. And then the Carr Fire has claimed about 178,000 acres, and it's only about 50% contained as well.
Right.
So
that's all what we have going on currently.
Yeah. So welcome to LA.
We are surrounded, and I think we say Mendocino, not Mendocino.
I thought it was Mendocino. Because they had that sandwich place, Mendocino Farms, so it's Mendocino Farms.
Yes, it's Mendocino Farms.
Well, no wonder she looks at me weird when I go, oh, I'm at Mendocino Farms.
Okay.
What's the guy's name? I'm so pissed at him. I've blanked on it.
So he's 51 years old. His name is Forrest Gordon Clark.
Yeah. And, I got to tell you, I saw him being arraigned in court. They played that clip on KTLA. Thank you, KTLA News. It's pretty clear that he is a very disturbed individual. Sure. And that was, you can see from his behavior, Whether or not there's an organic base for his behavior or he has a history of drug use, I don't know. Yeah. But the background on him, they've been interviewing the neighbors. And this guy, this is someone, I mean, this is an interesting phenomenon from a, maybe you can shed some light on this from a law enforcement perspective. But this is a mountainous area. People actually live in cabins and sort of what we would say would... They're homes, they're cabin homes. People live there. They live there full year round because these are people that not necessarily low income at all. They just prefer to live in a little bit more of the wilds or what would be a rural area, even though you're really only 30 minutes from a major
Trabuco Canyon's really nice.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
I mean, I think of that and I think of it.
But this guy was not in so great of a space, and I don't know if it was a legacy family home or whatever. But in interviewing the neighbors, they've been terrified of him for years. He has threatened people. He's gone just to the edge every single time, almost taunting people into altercations. And, what I noticed, interestingly enough, is he had these two defense attorneys that were standing in front of the holding tank. And he was really ranting, like he was demanding to be let out on bail, and then was very angry that his bail was $1 million.
Right.
Apparently just, could not grasp that. And he kept doing what we call mad dogging. He was mad dogging the camera. Yeah. He, when he knew the camera was on him, and usually in the courtroom like that, the people can tell the camera is on them when it's directed at them and there's a red light that indicates the camera's on. And he was mad dogging the camera. Yeah. And the attorney kept attempting to step in front of him because she would look up, see that what was going down, okay, this does not make my client look good at all. Right. But back to you, in a situation like that for law enforcement, can you talk about, I mean, it's got to be frustrating because they probably...
Well, especially, the piece where, you said he was kind of taking it up to the, right at the line where this community is so frustrated about him. And there's not a lot you can do until someone crosses a line. I mean, there's only so much preventative community policing you can do. And then your hands are tied, Still, I mean, I know we try to be preventative, but law enforcement is a reactive entity.
Right.
So, I know that...
And by the way, and this is coming from about as a far left, Libby, here I am saying this. If we were to go to the other side, of course, there would be people screaming. If you're like, well, no.
I've called the cops this many times.
Let's be proactive. It's like, no, well, you can't do that because you have rights in this country. And even the threat that he sent out eventually, what did he send? He sent out, he texted somebody or called somebody last week and he emailed.
Well, he emailed and said, if you don't, did he say this? Hang on. I'm just looking at what I wrote here. If you don't do something, he's going to kill someone or burn something down. So I think that was a... Well,
there was a follow-up. It was you're going to burn.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, he said this whole area is going to burn.
So, but he did... Here's the thing from working with detectives and working with you as long as I've known you.
Sure.
He's saying... He's giving... he's setting up a scenario where... Oh, God, I'm blanking on the word for it. It is...
where it's just vague enough where you can't...
It's just vague because he's not...
Make it a threat.
He's not saying, I'm going to set this fire right now. I'm setting this fire. He's like...
Right, it's not a criminal
if you
threat.
don't do it, it's going to happen, which is just thin and vague enough.
It's a veiled threat.
Exactly.
Right.
So it's not going to fall into what we would call a criminal threat or a terrorist threat, which is direct. There's an identified victim or set of victims, and there is a very direct indicator of intent.
Right.
So he, as I'm not going to use the C word, as altered as his behavior and or perceptions are, he is at least high enough functioning to be able to play it.
Sure.
Right? He's manipulating.
Yeah.
He's angry. Yeah. He's obviously got he's acting in some antisocial ways. He's exhibiting some behaviors.
So you have the frustration of the community and law enforcement, and then you have this possible mental health issue wrapped into that. I mean, that's what you deal with a lot, is having to go out and follow up on these threats. That's someone really sees it as a threat, but is it enough to get, other entities involved? But everyone's going to take it personally. I mean, can you imagine being the person living next door to this person?
Oh, it's got to be hell.
So
it's got to be hell.
Yeah, it's awful. I mean, he literally, this fire started right there in his neighborhood.
I've got a neighbor. My next door neighbor burns the nastiest sage in the world, and I'm all
just
in.
That is
I'm
terrible.
all into that stuff. I'm all into sage, and like it's. I'm like,
get him some good sage.
It's like I am trying to watch The Strain, and you're trying to smudge me out of the apartment.
In this weather, I have all my windows open. Come on.
Oh God.
All right, so we're going to sort of shift gears here and bring in our element of entertainment into this topic. And so while we were on our break, we were actually contacted by an author who is releasing a book in June. So it's out there, and I'll give you all the information. But that's kind of where this idea sparked.
Well, it's also...
Did you catch that?
I'm going to put some crackling fire noise just throughout.
Like a Yule log?
Yeah, exactly.
So we were contacted by Frank Gerardo Jr., and he recently wrote a book called Burned, Pyromania, Murder, and a Daughter's Nightmare. And what he did is he covered the John Orr fires and arsonists and collaborated with John Orr's daughter. And we're going to talk about John's.
This is particular to Southern California. And back, it's in Glendale, right? Where most of, okay. So Glendale, California is northeast of Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. It's basically a suburb. It's a beautiful, beautiful little, area.
Kind of between downtown and the valley, if you will.
Exactly. And, so this is really sort of, just a throw outside of Hollywood, where all this went down starting in the 70s. Is it more 80s?
80s, 90s.
Okay.
Yeah. So John Orr, before he was caught and identified, was known as the Pillow Pyro. So a lot of fires were set in these sort of linen or craft stores to material like stuffing for pillows and quilts and things like that. So that's how he kind of got dubbed the Pillow Pyro. Over his reign as the most prolific arsonist in history, really.
Yeah.
I mean, if we look at it, we're talking like probably 2,000 fires.
Oh my, it's staggering.
Knowing that there were at least 4 people that were killed as a result of one of the more obviously devastating and just destroying millions worth of property with these fires. But it's a really interesting story in that the book is great in covering sort of the biographical background of this individual. And the sort of twist to it all is that he was the chief arson investigator for the Glendale Fire Department. Yeah. So it's interesting. I highly suggest the book for a couple of reasons. One, it's so I know I've talked about this before. I love watching movies that are kind of backdropped in LA, and the book does a really great job, especially sort of that same San Gabriel Valley where I'm from, and the communities along the foothills, because this devastating fire that killed 4 people took place in South Pasadena. So these are all areas that I've grown up around.
And, one of the things that struck me about that is, LA being such a large city, Pasadena and Glendale, we're a center of industry, especially textile, manufacturing. I mean, that stuff still goes on here. And if you want to go shopping for like a really great bargain on a couch or a suit, you go to downtown LA and you go to the factories and you go to the warehouses, and you are walking through kind of an amazing cornucopia of options that are really frightening, because you are in the middle of a warehouse that's stuffed to the gills with stuff. Yeah. Even when, before Stats downgraded, like when they were still like a huge, or Michael's downtown, it's like you're surrounded by just gobs of flammable stuff.
Totally.
And I never thought of that until I started diving into this. So it's your fault.
Okay, thanks.
But I was really impressed, as you were, in the way he catches local color. He really captures Southern California, Glendale, Los Angeles in the 80s.
Yes.
I mean, he does a really good job of setting that up. I would say, there was a little bit of I had a problem with following it in a linear fashion. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure if that was a choice of his to be
kind of a back and forth.
I mean, certainly, Gillian Flynn and Gone Girl did a great job of that for a fictional piece. But for a sort of a docu-historical narrative, it was hard to follow for me. But at the same time, I think he really captured something that we're going to be talking about, which is the psych makeup of this guy.
Right.
And we'll talk a little bit about there was a movie made, an HBO movie that is really great and really horrible at the same time. I mean, it's great and awful, and we'll laugh about that.
Yeah. So when John Orr was the chief arson investigator, he was kind of that guy as arsons are breaking out, which are majority his. He was like the guy being interviewed on the news to kind of put the public at ease. Like, for me, especially growing up in Southern California, everyone knows Dr. Lucy Jones when an earthquake happens, that she's going to be on television, that she's going to tell us, look, there's the main one, there was the aftershock, there's not another big one coming, just like, okay, please talk to me, Dr. Lucy, because
the difference here is that Dr. Lucy can't actually cause earthquakes.
True.
That we know
or can she? And she's awesome on Twitter, by the way.
Yeah.
I adore that woman. I feel like she's my surrogate aunt from growing up around here.
But what you're talking about is someone that, comes on media as a trusted person. You're looking at this person going, they're giving me the information I need to know. Right. And we talk about that. I mean, earthquake is a perfect parallel, because you really do feel out of control and in danger.
Oh, yeah.
Same thing with these fires. So people were looking to this guy consistently.
Yeah.
And he even...
And he was inserting himself there. I mean, he loved that.
Well, he loved it.
Talk about the psychological makeup. I mean,
absolutely. I mean, even the really sad irony in this is that, when you read the book, you realize he's the highest respected expert in this area. He's training other people to be really good.
Right.
But then he's going out and finding his own evidence.
Yes.
And holding it up. Like, here's the point of origin.
Yep.
Here's the trigger.
Yep.
Holding
Everyone
it up.
Watching? Everyone
is everybody looking at me? He's holding it with like a pair of tongs, like trying to get people's attention.
Oh, right.
And he's the one, which also reminds me, I don't know, and I'm blanking on her name, but there was this wonder dog back in the 90s that was like the corpse sniffing dog with the trainer. And like they kept finding forensic evidence everywhere of mass burials, but it never quite, they would find evidence, but it would never quite go through. And it found out that the trainer she was planting evidence. She had, like, in the cuff of her pants, she would drop DNA evidence that she would then direct the dog to.
Wow.
And it all fell apart. I mean, it's so sad that, like, someone's ego just gets to a pathologically toxic level that, especially in Orr's case, lives were lost.
Oh, gosh.
At least in these other examples, it's like, okay, I'm doing this for fame and fortune, but it's not hurting anybody's life.
Right. So, there's all these fires breaking out stores. There's also some in some more rural areas. And when they start to sort of piece this together, it's because they see that there's this series of fires set between LA and like Central California, where an arson conference is being held. So they're like, interesting. Like someone's literally driving up the road
and just setting fires.
So then it happens again. There's another conference. There's a series of fires. And another fire investigator on this task force, because the feds finally put together a task force, says, give me all the names of everyone who was at both of those. And John Orr's name is on that on both of those lists.
Well, there's got to be a lot of commonality, though, right?
Yeah, I think there ended up being, I don't know, a dozen or so names that were on both, which I would feel like there would probably be more. But so they get these lists, and then they also end up getting a partial fingerprint at one of the scenes. And guess who it matches to? So, I mean, talk about fantastic detective work, just of, putting things together, but then actually having, the evidence to back it up. It was fantastic. But so they get this fingerprint hit and they put him under surveillance, and they're like, let's just watch him, we'll be able to stop anything that happens, hopefully. So kind of the last sort of nail in the coffin, if you will, before they end up arresting him, is he actually starts a fire at the Warner Brothers studios. And starts it, goes home. The dispatcher calls him to dispatch him to it, but she gives him the wrong address. So, and not on purpose. This wasn't like they set him up to do that. So he drives to the wrong address and then drives to the right address without ever being corrected. And this is all under surveillance. It's not like he called and was like, hey, I'm here. There's no fire. He knew to go to Warner Brothers. So that was kind of the last piece. So they serve a search warrant on his home, arrest warrant, arrest him. And they
find a lot of stuff.
A lot of interesting things. But probably the two biggest things were, one was his manuscript of a book, a fictional book he was writing, which was basically a confession if you just put it all in first person.
Which we could do a whole episode about that. There's one of the most, the granddaddy of all the show. I think we talked in our first episode about City Confidential. There was an episode about a woman who had, brutally killed her husband in his sleep accidentally. And I'm doing air quotes when I say accidentally, because they kept a gun under their pillow for safety, and she accidentally,
Oh, yeah.
And then they saw that she had written a whole manuscript about it, and she was trying to, to sell it to a bookseller. That's a whole thing in itself right there, apart from what we're doing. And it's got to be about ego. I mean, that's got to be narcissism, right?
Yeah,
the idea,
completely.
I mean, look at him. I mean, you got to say the balls of here's my route going between Southern California, Central California, and nobody's going to figure it out.
Right. Yeah. So they find this manuscript, which has, all of these fires, and then it also talks about the fire of the hardware store where the 4 people lost their lives. And so they put that together, and that ultimately is what he ends up getting convicted on. And he was up for the death penalty, but the jury was split, so he ended up with a life sentence.
Oh, he's got 4 life sentences.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, 4 life sentences. But
wasn't he, I know he was doing it with the pillows also. He had this thing where he would wrap a certain brand of cigarette.
Right, to a matchbook.
With
a rubber band.
Right. And was there a lighter, or the lighter would ignite the matches, or is it like a...
well, he would smoke a cigarette. He had the cigarette lit, and that would light the matchbook, which would then light the material.
But and I know he did it a lot.
You could smoke in stores back in the
right, yeah, 80s. It's a very different time. But didn't he also do convenience stores with Dorito packages?
Yes.
Because Doritos, in fact, they say, if you're going camping and you need a starter, that Doritos are so high in oil and delicious, by the way. Absolutely. Doritos, if you want to send us a whole box of those, we're happy to have them. They're very flammable.
Right.
And that was one of the, even before
they'll save your life.
They started going, why are these, this guy is setting convenience stores, because they were smaller versions. He started building up to the bigger
sort of
ones.
these sort of little chip stands.
Yes.
That's where some of them were breaking out. I think that was some of his initial work. So
well, and also, just I'm sorry, I know I don't mean to be funny, but the idea, we're so, even about anywhere in the U.S. now, and I grew up during a time in the South where, your table at a restaurant in the non-smoking section would be back to back with the table in the smoking section.
Right.
So what we don't realize, because we're so far from that sort of thing, is that you smelled it all the time.
Right.
So many people, it became part of your sort of olfactory experience. so that you might not notice it when you walk in.
Right.
It wasn't until I remember moving to Chicago in the 80s and then coming back to like a family reunion or something and driving through sort of a rural area and walking through a restaurant to use the restroom and coming out and getting in the car and my mother going, did you smoke a cigarette?
I promise. Mom.
So the idea that somebody could take a lit cigarette that's burning attached to a matchbook.
Right.
So that smell, it's like they wouldn't even notice it. Like,
if he walks in people smoking
are smoking
it, then...
Oh, it must be still the smoke from when he was doing that.
Sure. So his book was called, or the manuscript was called Points of Origin, Playing with Fire. And the main character was Aaron Stiles. He was a firebug, so a firefighter who set fires. And so in this manuscript, he talks about creating these fires was more exciting than sex.
Wow.
And kind of talks about the theme throughout it is that there's this sexual excitement that comes with it. And then the manuscript also talks about this character, this firefighter, committing rapes and murders. And so it's like, what else was he doing or not doing? Who knows? So they were just looking at the possible motive, though, of this sexual thrill from watching things burn. Because aside from the manuscript, they also found VHS tapes of homes on the hillside, and then just, videotaping a home, and then months later, that home burning, fire responding to it. And I'm thinking again, like the 80s, there had to be this guy like standing on the street with this giant VHS recorder on his shoulder.
Ass thing. What?
This wasn't covert stuff.
So I'm going to jump ahead a little bit.
Yeah,
and we'll come back to it. But so the HBO movie stars Ray Liotta.
Right. It's also called Point of Origin.
Point of Origin. It's, 20 years old now.
Right.
And Ray Liotta, I think, is a very talented actor. I wish this movie was better, but
2002.
They do something very well in that they make him creepy. And his own daughter says, "You're creepy."
Yeah.
And he has like the mustache that doesn't flatter his face at all, and sort of the like flesh colored, members only windbreaker jacket and the glasses and
tinted glasses.
Although he's super smart, you just realize like, oh, this is a creepy guy. And then they talk about him interacting with people, and yet he was having an affair on his second wife, and taking time away from his blended family. Writing this novel and setting these fires and doing his job. And you kind of get the sense that, like, I wonder, it'd be interesting to read interviews with the people that worked with him, if even at the time, while they respected him for being an expert, that he was not seen as some kind of a creep.
Yeah, what their vibe was.
Like, really just an ick vibe going on with him.
Yeah. So prior to becoming a firefighter, he wanted to be a police officer. So he went through the process with LAPD. And he's former military. And it's really interesting to read in Burned about his background and time with his first wife in the military, and her finally getting tired of his crap and leaving him, and sort of the womanizing and not being a part of family events, and just kind of off leaving in the middle of the night to go play pool, and just kind of some bizarre behaviors. But he didn't pass the psych at LAPD. So, hang on, I have a passage here. So in the psychologist's report, they ended up talking about that there was an anxiety with him about relationship to women and authority figures, and that he had really a problematic work history, including theft, but just not a stable work history. And aside, I think, sort of like out of the military, just a guy that kind of floated around. When we look at work history, when I was doing assessments with sex offenders, that was huge because we want to look at stability, and lack of stability in your work history speaks to impulsiveness. If you're going to say, fuck this job, I'm quitting because someone treated me badly, it's indicative of not being able to adapt or work out problems, or, and at the cost of, I'm not going to have a paycheck tomorrow. That's pretty impulsive. So, whereas I'm sure everybody has probably left a job once, maybe on short terms. Usually people put in 2-week notices.
Yeah.
They decide, I'm going to have something else as a backup before I do this. So they really kind of pinpointed that as one of the reasons that they didn't take him at LAPD. But he was not happy with that. When he got that letter that he didn't pass, he was not happy.
Do we have any information on whether or not he challenged it, appealed it? Was there any record on that?
I can't remember. I think there might have been, but yeah. So I mean, I think the movie isn't.
Well, are we moving on to the movie now?
Yeah, let's move on to the movie.
So,
because I kind of think of Color of Night that we talked about.
Yes. Okay. So in a way, even though it's only 16 or 17 years old.
Yeah.
Okay, hold on. I got to close this YouTube window because it's going to start. Okay. So I do want to talk about the movie for a second because it really, it's 16, 17 years old, and yet it feels to me even more. It feels older. It feels like an 80s movie because it's really cheaply made.
Right.
And
there's great people in it.
There's fantastic, Colm Feore, Bai Ling, who looking gorgeous, by the way. But Ileana Douglas, who is an amazing actress, and all of them do fantastic jobs as actors.
Yes.
It's just that the way the story is told. Do you remember a movie a few years ago with Matt Damon called The Informant?
Yes.
Okay, I think it was brilliant because it's a true story about a guy with bipolar disorder and a couple of other personality disorders, but he is also just a pathological liar.
Right.
But upper level executive for a company, and the way that they frame the story, and I understand that nobody's life was lost as a result of the crimes he committed, but it was done in this lighthearted tone with this really great score that zipped you through the story that was unbelievable. And there were elements of going into the internal monologue versus what's actually happening in reality. And it was very, very well constructed. I think it wasn't Robert Zemeckis. I'm blanking on who the director was, but it was great. So this movie didn't have that.
Yeah.
The guy,
lots of potential. It could have a
lot of potential, but it veers into one of the things that I think is great, which probably everyone can relate to an extent, which is the idea of when you are under duress or when you're in a frightening situation, even though your body is frozen, you have a fantasy of how you're going to address a situation. And some people who are dysregulated or pathological may have a fantasy of I'm going to get into this shootout with these police and I'm going to be this superhero that takes them all out. And what the director does is try and illustrate that.
The fantasy part.
Part. And he does that several times. And it's first couple of times, it's super confusing. The last time is just laughable. It takes you out of the moment of oh my gosh, we finally now know, because I'm not giving anything away. I highly recommend watching
Obviously, we told you who the arsonist is.
We told you who it is. You already know. But watch it. It's on YouTube for free because someone has illegally uploaded it and changed the way they've gotten away with it is they've changed the speed of it.
Yeah.
So everyone's voice is way too high and fast. But it also shortens the watching movie.
Yeah, it does.
But the thing that I was talking about, we have in the movie the arsonist who looks freakish, and then you realize later on it's because it is him, it is Orr, but they don't want to give it away. So they have Ray Liotta in really horrific prosthetics. So one of the things they do for the purpose of storytelling is that you watch scenes with him investigating and trying to put this thing together. And then you're watching in other scenes the actual arsonist and but he looks really freaky. And obviously we realize later on that Ray Liotta is the arsonist, but they've taken him and they've put him in these bizarre prosthetics that look sort of stretched and melty, and a bad wig and a bad goatee, and he's using a weird accent. And then a nice thing is that they blend it together at the end. Right. It's like it sort of fades in. But the last shootout scene is like...
Oh, God, that's the one you're talking about.
That's what I'm talking about. Okay, imagine, if you will, folks, close your eyes and imagine
that's fantastic.
Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, only with cops and a doughy, middle-aged man.
In a members-only jacket.
With a bad mustache and glasses. And he's literally flying through the air.
Flipping off of cars, doing like triple horizontal somersaults, spinning as he's shooting everybody. This is the exact point where my husband walked in the room and he's like, "What are you watching?"
Well,
and I couldn't explain it.
And look, and I'm going to tell everybody, if you can't tolerate watching the whole movie, if you search for it on YouTube, there's Point of Origin, and there's also Point of Origin Shootout. It's just the shootout scene.
Oh my gosh. Weren't we just talking about that at lunch? Like fantasies you play in your head in real life, and then you cut to like just staring at the person talking. Another book that I want to suggest, that if you want to read a piece of nonfiction about, is called Fire Lever, and it was written by Joe Wamba, and he's a former LAPD detective that worked Hollywood Division forever, and he writes a lot of fiction LAPD cop books, but he wrote a piece about this as well. So just some other resources for you guys.
But let's go back to Orr for a second.
Yeah,
so let's just riff on the makeup. I mean, what we've talked about so far with the underpinnings of arson is pyromania, which would be an impulse control disorder. Mm-hmm. That's not what's going on for Orr. Although he's getting some of the hallmarks, right?
Yeah,
because he's
I think
planning.
So. When I talk about motive specific to firefighters, we could talk about that too.
So there's this real... I mean, I think this is going to be our segue then.
Yeah.
Is he wants to be a hero. He wants to be a hero and respected so badly that not only is he willing to take people's lives and go to the hospital room of the two survivors of one of the fires and offer them consoling and how are you, and I'm the one that figured out, we're going to figure out who did this.
Right.
Just kind of, that's so gross.
Yeah, it is.
But then there's also the idea that look, I'm going to make a parallel of when I'm working with infidelity as a marriage and family therapist. One of the things that you will find that can be a common denominator when people go outside the boundaries of what they've established as rules in their relationship, if they have affairs, they're seeking attention. They're seeking the attention that they feel like they cannot get from their primary partner. Right. And certainly, I'm not sure if the book covers this, but that's the way the movie had portrayed it, is his affair with the other woman. And he was a hero to her. He was a hero to his wife, even though she was frustrated because he wouldn't show up. And it really pissed him off that his teenage daughter was like, I'm not falling for your game. I know you're a creep.
Right.
And how challenging must that be for her? It'd be fascinating to talk to her and see, to realize not only the havoc and the wreckage that he caused, but that she got glimmers of it when she was that age.
Yeah,
that's
as an adolescent.
Potent.
Well, and that must have been scary for him. Oh, she's seeing through my bullshit.
Yep.
I can fool all these adults.
Right. So now I'm going to intimidate her boyfriend, or I'm going to impose these really strict rules on her at, at 15.
Control. Yeah. So in talking about him wanting to be a hero, I wanted to talk a little bit about firefighters who are arsonists. And I think that is what we sort of think of. And it's probably, I guess thanks to John Orr being the most prolific example of firefighter who is an arsonist as well. But we kind of think of that as a motivator, that they want to be the hero. And looking into the research, there's all kinds of motives. And actually, they mimic more of what we see with other arsonists who are not necessarily firefighters. So I'll go through those categories. But, I want to be careful with this, not just as the sister of a firefighter, but to not misrepresent a population.
Oh, I mean,
we're talking, millions of firefighters if we talk about both paid and volunteer throughout this country. And really, we're talking about 100 a year get arrested for arson. So the frustrating thing in this research is probably the lack of it, because there's no official tracking system or database for this stuff. And I think it was just frustrating for me in researching it that for every symposium or paper that's been proposed, they always say we need a tracking system for this, and no one's made one yet. So, whether that gets folded into like the Uniform Crime Report that the FBI does, which I don't even know if they track arson. I think that's something that's left out of there. But to be able to get better data on this. So,
which is the problem when it's a small population. We struggle to get the data we need for police.
Right.
There's more and more every year, but we don't have decades of research in these areas that other areas of research might have.
Right. Or even just criminal psychology. It's really hard to get information about juvies and women because so many of them are...
You should say...
Juveniles?
Juveniles. Oh, just so people know.
Okay. Because we can study adult men until the cows come home. That's the majority of people. So, the reason this is so, I think, sensitive in a way is because when a firefighter does turn out to be an arsonist, there is such huge fallout with his colleagues and his department and the community. There has to be a lot of damage control done because... Well,
the idea of these people that you're working shoulder to shoulder with, these individuals watching each other's back, even if you don't like someone in a situation like that, you have to trust them, right? And they have to be able to trust you. So an incident like this wrecks that. It wrecks it.
Sure. Yeah. So firefighter arsonists don't fit neatly into one profile, but the idea is there are very adequate screening and psychological assessments done when someone wants to become a firefighter. That it's not that arsonists are becoming firefighters, it's that firefighters then become arsonists. So it's sort of after the fact. And there's a whole number of reasons. But what I want to do is kind of talk about the profiles that two of the biggest studies have been able to come up with of what the firefighter arsonist might look like. And both this data mirrored each other really well. So generally, we're looking at white males, which is probably the majority of firefighters anyway, ages younger, so like 17 to 25 years old. And that's generally what it is. It's the younger population that's getting in trouble for it. What you spoke to earlier, one or both parents are missing from the home during childhood. But if it is an intact home, the emotional atmosphere is pretty unstable.
Right.
So really disruptive or harsh or just kind of an unstable rearing in general. And there were some flavors of overprotective mothers. One of the parents, whomever is still home, if it's a one-parent household, just, has a lot on their plate. So it's a really cold, sort of distant or aggressive relationship with that parent. For this typology of person, if they're married, usually poor marital adjustment. If they're not married, they were generally found to still be living at home with their parent or parents. So, that's interesting, having kind of this good career and
failure to launch at the same time.
Failure to launch, one of your areas of expertise. Interpersonal relationships are really unstable, if they're at all. Usually they're just lacking a social support system. So, that's kind of speaking to what they're like socially. Even though they are usually average to above average intelligence, they typically did really poorly in school.
Okay, so
what does that say to you?
Well, I'm going to make a huge leap.
Yeah.
I'm going to go back to what you were saying about females and authority figures.
Okay.
So females in authority positions are very threatening to them. Because I'm just saying that the majority of primary and secondary educators in this country are female.
Sure. And authority figures.
Yeah, exactly. So, they're also, and that's not accounting for the possibility of maybe, neurological wiring, if there's, if there are learning disabilities involved, maybe that's part of it to an extent for some of them. But, it's certainly, think about this, is like if you don't have mastery in other areas of your life, what are you going to do to seek power?
Right.
And boy, this is the ultimate way to seek power, right?
Oh, sure. Everyone loves a firefighter.
Yeah.
They're the heroes,
Well,
not everyone loves cops, but everyone loves firefighters.
Well, they also look awesome. You drive past the West Hollywood Fire Department. It's like all they do is work. They don't. That's not all they do. They also provide very valuable services, and they're EMTs as well. But damn, those guys work out a lot.
They also sit in their easy boy chairs and eat ice cream.
Oh, you're saying because you're a cop. That's what you're doing.
No, because that's what I make fun of my brother for doing.
Oh, right.
He sent me pictures of the lazy boys, not easy.
And
boys.
I've seen the stuff that goes between him and your husband too.
Right.
So the cop versus firefighter, they send each other some good burns.
They sure do, and they each want to do what the other one's doing really deep down, I think.
Oh, funny. But, okay, so, just to get back to that sense of power also, so certainly, while these wonderful jobs, these wonderful career pursuits of, firefighting and law enforcement are certainly, there's a spectrum of people that are attracted to those. What they want when they're doing those psych evals is they're not necessarily looking for people that are going for a sense of power, though, right?
Oh, sure.
But some people are drawn to that, and thank God they screen them out, like they screened out Orr. But that's what an arsonist is doing. An arsonist is going for a sense of power. I have control over when this fire starts, and I have control over calling people to it. Maybe he doesn't have anything to do with getting the fire put out. And they probably don't think about the wreckage or how to control, necessarily the consequences.
But he also has the control of, especially I'm thinking of him in front of the camera, of making people feel at ease and dealing with people's emotions and controlling that. Where
let me comfort you.
Yeah. So turning to motives, there is that concept of wanting to be seen as a hero. They call that sort of vanity fire setting. But there really is little to no concrete evidence about this being a motive. Most of the motives, and John Douglas from the FBI's behavioral analysis unit, from our Mindhunter muse, in the crime classification manual that he and his colleagues published in 2006, they identified 6 motives for arson, which are still pretty much followed today. So that's excitement, vandalism, revenge motivated, profit, crime concealment, or extremism. So this is also that, and that would be for general population. But this is also echoed with firefighter arsonist. So the excited, motivated typology, if you will, is kind of what we would say, okay, if this person is a pyromaniac, this would fit into that category, because it's the excitement derived from the fire setting, as well as, attention, recognition, and sexual gratification that can be wrapped up in there. So this would be, firefighter arsonists who seek recognition. They set and then maybe even discover the fires. Like, oh, I was just driving by and, off duty.
Well, that looks suspicious.
Right. The last person to ever be without.
I just happened to be in the neighborhood.
And I jumped into action and pulled these kids out of this home. So
this is the 7-Eleven that has the Magnum bars that I like, not the one that's closest to my house.
Right. Exactly. Vandalism motivated arson. So this is just kind of that malicious, mischievous fire setting that ends up resulting in damage to property. This one they find to be more frequent with civilian fire setters than in the firefighter population. So this is kind of that category that I see as like the most common type, the kids, the adolescents.
Right.
Maybe they're just kind of seeing what will catch on fire, what won't, just sort of this experimentation, vandalism. Definitely knowing not to do it around people or something, a structure, but they're playing in a field or a trash bin or something like that. Revenge motivated arson. So this is an area that I have an interest in terms of like threat management and risk assessment of who would be motivated to do this because they feel that it has to be in retaliation of some injustice, whether it's real or imagined. But there's some sort of circumstance or event that they see as if they were wronged, and so they act out in a revenge sort of manner. And so arson can be one of those ways in which they act out. There has been history of some firefighters who have been disgruntled and had these sort of perceived grievances where they have then they've actually set their own fire stations on fire.
But isn't that different then? I mean, doesn't that take it out of sort of the parameters of what we're looking at? I mean, if you were to look at a disgruntled firefighter who set their own station on fire, would they necessarily meet the criteria of sort of the home family stressors, the failure to launch, inability to connect with others? Or, I mean, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think what's different about this to address that is that it takes it out of like that individualist, it's like this group, this mob mindset, almost, because it happens where several of them are in on it. So it's sort of this perceived grievance, it might be directed towards fire chief in some cases, not getting paid well enough, whatever. And they have this group mentality of this is how we're going to seek revenge. Okay. So yeah, I think it's just a different category. Motive, yeah, it's a motive for arson. And then there's crime concealment. So, you set fire to destroy records of some sort of fraud, right. Or,
I've done that. Oh, wait. Ooh, are we on? I'm recording.
Or covering up a body. You can think of ways in which arson is...
Which never works, by the way.
Never.
It never, folks, if you're going to do that, you never burn the body. We've learned that from forensics files because it just never burns.
Fire, it seems like the fire sciences are so good.
Except for, and this gets, I'm sorry,
okay.
And this is my weird sticking in, is the spontaneous combustion cases, which are so weird in the past, is like the entire body just spontaneously combusted and
nothing else.
Nothing, and there's a foot left. There's like that happen. It's like, but it was always an overweight smoker, so they were saying that like the fat sort of acts as like tallow for a candle wick, but still, then you talk about you see
they were eating Doritos,
right? Yeah, because then there's somebody on one of these crime shows, and they're like, "Yeah, we were going to get rid of that body," and they tried to burn it on a campfire. Oh, it just those bones and teeth didn't just magically combust.
Oh, we can save that for some other episode.
Yeah.
So yeah, crime concealment. I mean, there's been some cases of it with firefighters, but I mean, clearly there's other stuff going on. Like there was this guy in Memphis in 2000 that murdered his wife and then lit his house on fire. So I mean, that's a whole separate issue. It's not as if he's a pyromaniac.
But interestingly enough, like I don't know, like I'm not going to say without knowing anything about that individual whether or not he had an impulse control disorder, but that was certainly an impulsive thing. I don't think there was any thought, murder and burn down the house. That it's usually is not
what
planned.
Do I do now? Yeah. Right. And then we have profit motivated. So this is, either for monetary gain or to eliminate debt in some way. There's even been, the way that they find this with specific firefighters is that they need the overtime or need more work, so they would go out setting fires. I know, it's awful.
That's terrible.
So there's been some firefighters involved in that way. So usually we think of it as like insurance scams with people who aren't firefighters. And then the last one is extremist terrorist motivated arson. Do you remember when the Hummers first came out, the vehicles that the vehicles I had?
Well, you're looking at my face right now. I loathe them, and I loathe them. That I'm not an eco-terrorist. I never set one on fire, but people were setting them on fire.
Yeah, in West Covina, they set a bunch of them on fire and destroyed a bunch of them. But this could be anything from bombing abortion clinics or setting them on fire to slaughterhouses and things like that.
Which is motivated by a different, it's that is the act of terrorism that they use, but those are motivated by
social, political, religious, those types of causes. And there have been some cases where firefighters have been mostly Alabama. They have lit African American churches on fire. That's all.
Yeah. It's horrible.
It is, but even though it's not a motive category, there's also this phenomenon in which they're just bored and they've done all this training and there's all this excitement and I've done all these things to become a firefighter.
And now it's hurry up and wait.
Now I'm sitting here cleaning the fire truck. And even in day to day, I think about when I was a police officer, they're responding to medical calls. They're responding to all sorts of things that are not fires. They're because they are paramedics. Most of them are cross-trained as paramedics, and that's what they're doing. They're shipping people back and forth to the hospital. They're not fighting fires. So there has been a phenomenon of, again, sort of, two or more conspiring to, hey, let's go set a fire so we have something to respond to and practice with our training. So it's scary. I don't know. It's good to know and really look at the numbers as far as how few firefighters are really arrested for this.
And yet it's shocking.
Yeah, it is.
In the way that it's just shocking that where is the drive coming from? Is it coming from boredom? Is it coming from developmental? Is it coming from emotional? Is it coming from really impulse control?
Right.
And yet, even so, here is what you have chosen. Did you choose it because of those things? Did these desires emerge? I think in some cases they probably emerged because they didn't emerge until the opportunity presented itself.
Right. Well, and the way that they're addressing it is really through education, training and education. See something, say something. If you feel like one of your colleagues is off or complaining about some of these things and there seems to be a motive brewing to address it to supervisors, but also education and training in, look, this happens. You may not even think about it until it happens. It's kind of like in police work, we call it the continuum of compromise, where there's the risk for police officers to make unethical choices.
Oh, that's where the behavioral drift
the behavioral drift
comes in.
Yes.
Okay.
And that they say if you train them for it to expect, hey, you may be tested ethically, that they're more likely to make better decisions rather than just assuming that they're going to make the right decision. So it's saying, hey, just be aware of this.
Well, look,
you walk into a dope house and there's, a ton of money, and does it matter if, just where those things are tempted and compromised? There's
a very famous case that has been put on record that is used when you work for the county. If you go and work as a deputy, or you go and you work in the jail, they have this whole sort of mini documentary that you watch, and it's about a young man who became a sheriff's deputy. And I think I may have even mentioned this before in some of our previous podcasts, but he was straight shooter. He had always wanted to be a deputy. Family was so supportive of it. He aced the tests. He aced the training. He was the star of the training. But what happened is that he didn't immediately go to the streets, because none of the deputies go to the streets. They become jailers for sometimes up to 4 or 5 years, which is incredibly frustrating.
It was 7 years when I went to the academy, the people I was graduating with.
Oh, wow. I mean, that's a long time.
Because there was a hiring freeze.
Because that's not what they're going in for, right? You know, they don't want
to be babysitters.
Exactly. And they don't want to deal, certainly, you know, the intensity that comes with it. And, you know, and he gets put on early AMs. He's at a North County facility, which is a general population, and he gets totally manipulated by one of the inmates. And before you know it, he's running drugs for the guy. Jeez. He never intended to do that, but the drift happened, that compromise.
Oh, completely.
You know,
and it happens just little baby steps at a time. It's not a huge ask of, you know, jumping into some criminal conspiracy with an inmate.
And also there's one part that we haven't touched on as far as typologies, and this is probably, I would hope, would be the most rare, but that sometimes the pyromania comes from basically borderline psychotic symptoms. And, you know, I've run into a couple of those working in the prison, working in the jail, where I'll ask, you know, why did you set this? Well, God told me to.
Yeah.
I was supposed to purify this area.
Right.
And this is somebody that has a history of psychosis, and they really do believe it.
Right.
And for those of you, I mean, a great example of that I think was portrayed very well in literature, if anybody is into horror literature, and like Stephen King, in his book The Stand, one of the recurring characters that has their own chapter is a psychotic arsonist. And in this post-apocalyptic world, he finds ample opportunity. You know, he's not looking to see the firemen come. He's just looking to see the pretty flames dance and to clap like a little baby, clap like a little kid when he sees oil tankers explode that he's set bombs for.
Well, what about starting fires with your mind?
Oh,
another Stephen King.
I know. We got to get. We'll have to get Drew Barrymore on and ask
there
her
you
about
go.
that.
That'd be so
fire
amazing.
Starter. Yes.
So I'll throw a ton of references up on the website as always, in case you guys want to dive into this a little bit further. But just felt like a good time to cover this topic.
Yeah, it's pretty
interesting.
Pretty poignant and salient and timely right now. To take it back to what we were talking about at the beginning of the episode, we had like just an amazing breakfast this morning with Holly Weird Paranormal, and we are so excited to be collaborating on a couple of projects with them. So please keep following us. Send us your ideas. Reach out to us on Facebook.
Give them a listen.
Please give them a listen. They're hilarious.
Follow them on Instagram, please.
Their dynamic is just lovely, and I really like it. And we're going to be doing something with them. We've already talked about this, one of our episodes where we do a crossover. We're going to do it live on Facebook.
We would like to.
Which we're very excited.
Let us know what you think about that, if you would be interested in watching it at all.
So thanks so much. We're going to see you very soon.
We promise. No more apologies.
No more apologies. On our next episode of LA
Not So
Confidential. Have a great evening, folks. Take care.
Bye. Bye-bye.